Hi, and welcome to the Aortic Kitchen. This is our episode number 8 for season 2, and I am Rob Seltzer, the aortic chef.
I'm Mindy Seltzer, the aortic dietitian, and welcome to our show.
We're changing the format a little bit tonight, and I will not be cooking and demonstrating, but we're going to have a discussion and interview. I have a very special guest tonight, and her name is Deanne Maples, and she is with the Florida Beef Council, or often called just Florida Beef. And we're going to tackle a topic on beef. What is its place in the aortic kitchen? Because there's lots of beliefs out there about beef, whether it's healthy for us as aortic, survivors of aortic disease. And we're going to obviously take a look at that and see what Deanne has to say. So welcome, Deanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Chef. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is a pleasure tonight.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for joining us. I've known Deanne now for, I don't know,
30.
no, 10, so yeah, 10, a while back.
A while.
Yeah, maybe going back to my old Cisco days. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Could be. But anyways, we've known each other quite a while professionally, and we have worked together. So Deanne, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and your work with Florida Beef?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I am, by title, the executive director of the Florida Beef Council, and I'll share a little bit more in just a minute on what the Beef Council is. Me personally, I am a longtime advocate of the agriculture industry. I grew up a farm girl with cattle from the time I was, I don't know, 12 or 13 on, something like that. Showed cattle, showed a variety of different livestock. Was a member of the 4-H in the FFA, and came from a family with a farming background. So agriculture has always been a love and a passion for me. I came to the Beef Council not right out of college, of course. I actually worked with SeaWorld Orlando and Anheuser-Busch, and did a couple of other things along the way, but knew that agriculture was my passion, and then had the opportunity to come to the Florida Beef Council, which is probably what I like to say the last job I'll do in my life. I love it so much. I believe in what we do. I'm a mom of 3, so I stay really busy. I have 2 boys that are 20 and 23, and a daughter who's 14, and so that kind of makes up what I do when I'm not working, right? I love to cook and get in my kitchen, and I always say cooking is therapy for me, and cooking is love, feeding people is love. So that's it's a natural fit for me to work in the beef industry for a variety of reasons. I've been with the Beef Council now for a number of years, and in short, really, we are the marketing and promotion entity for the beef industry in our state. In fact, I'll share a little slide here kind of on what we do. We were founded in 1955, and really to be the voice of our beef cattle producers. They recognized that there had to be somebody, some organization that really worked on their behalf and talked about the great story of beef. And so the Beef Council was formed, and all these years later, we're still working hard at it. We really focus our efforts in the area of food service and nutrition and retail and consumer outreach, and we're funded by a program called the Beef Checkoff, which is kind of interesting. It was created with the Farm Bill 1985, and it says that every time a bovine animal sells in the United States, $1 from the sale price comes back to these programs. And one of the things that I'm most proud of that we do with the Beef Checkoff is the research work that we do, the product research that really translates to consumer health and safety and nutrition. We put our money where our mouth is with that, and we feed the same product to our own families. So that's a big portion of what we do.
Great. Yeah, so you've got the history up there too, which is,
Oh,
yeah, which is
yeah.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I probably should share that real quickly too. So some of your listeners might find it interesting to know that Florida was the first state to have cattle. The cattle industry began in what is now Florida in 1521, and so we've been doing it the longest. It's America's oldest industry, and it was born here, and of course that means the American cowboy was born here too, not in Texas or any of those other places. So. We've been at it a long time, and I think that really helps to tell the story of our sustainability. I always say we've done it for 500 years. What's more sustainable? So,
absolutely. And we have a member that raises cattle in Texas.
yeah.
So yeah, she'll always has something to say about that, Texas versus Florida, So
Oh,
it's
yeah. Well,
it's fun.
I will tell you, we work really closely with our folks in Texas. We send a whole lot of cattle out to that state. And so they're probably the state in the country that is the most like us. We share the same type of cattle herd, and I work very closely with their producers and their beef council. In fact, I was in Texas last week. I was in Dallas, Fort Worth for some work. So um, when I go to Texas, it also feels like home.
Right, that's where she is actually. So
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned that we send them lots of cattle. So that's a fact that most people don't realize when they think of this. Well, I never really see, cattle ranches and slaughterhouses and all that in Florida, but you are kind of like an incubator. You raise you birth them and then send them off to other states to
Yeah.
finish growing up. You raise them to whatever adolescence or
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's right. The name we call it in the industry is cow calf. We're a cow calf state, and it probably isn't rocket science for folks to figure out why that is. I mean, you look outside the window right now here at my house, and it's sunny and 80 degrees and beautiful, and we've had some rain today. Hallelujah. But we can grow grass all year long. It's this amazing climate, which makes rearing babies really, really great. And so that's our niche in the industry. We have about 1.8 million head of cattle in Florida, and we are home to 8 of the largest cow-calf ranches in America, including the number 1, which is Deseret Cattle and Citrus. So a lot of people don't realize we're really a big player in the cattle industry. We're rated about number 9 right now by herd size in the entire country.
Great. All right. Off the subject, just out of curiosity, what breed are those cattle in that picture? They're so cute.
Yeah. So those are our superstars. That's what I call them. Those are a heritage breed for us. That's the Brahman cattle breed. And that was actually brought to Florida, 100 years ago or so by a family that is still ranching today. And it's called Bos Indicus by its scientific name, but it is primarily a breed that you would find over in the sub-Saharan regions of the country where it's or the world where it's quite hot. This breed, we crossbreed into our cattle here with a lot of Black Angus and a lot of Charolais, and it allows us to really grab the best traits of the Brahman cattle. They're very sturdy animals. They're great mothers. They are very pest tolerant and heat tolerant, and really maintain great health. And so for a lot of reasons, they really fit our subtropical climate here beautifully, and they are our superstar.
Wow, great. So let me change the subject a little bit for a
Sure.
minute. Since this is the Aortic Kitchen, as you know, we're part of Aortic Hope, which is a support group and such for and information for survivors of aortic disease and their caregivers, and we also provide information to the medical community for educational purposes and stuff. So I understand from our previous conversations that you also had aortic disease. And do you mind sharing that? Because I think our listeners will relate to that.
Yeah, not at all. I don't mind at all. So I'll back up just slightly from the recent things to say that I do have some congenital heart things that I likely was born with, that we didn't find until I was about the age of 20 or so, 20 or 21, when I suddenly took a little ill one day and surprised everybody. And they realized then that I had had some irregular heart rhythms and mitral valve prolapse. And I'm sure some of your folks are familiar with the mitral valve. And what that does. And so they saw that, and I began being monitored every year, a couple of times a year by a cardiologist. I also was diagnosed with high cholesterol at the age of 20. We'll talk about that today too. I wasn't working in the beef industry then, and that's genetic in my family. So 20 years old, high cholesterol, and they continue to monitor that. I also have a lower ejection fraction. I'm a longtime runner, big into fitness and things, and I still kind of have a cruddy ejection fraction. And I have a leaky tricuspid valve. So I have some things going on, and they monitor me every year for that. And then in the fall of last year, they started to recognize some irregular heart rhythms that they didn't like, and PVCs, a lot of PVCs, large ones close together, and a couple of other things that they weren't so great about. So I've had, in December, I had my first heart procedure, and then I had another one in March. I had a larger surgery. And so in that process, they determined that there was a problem with the aorta. So when they went in to do the ablation and make the repair, lo and behold, it wasn't in the easy spot they thought it was going to be, nor was it in the next spot that was a little more challenging. It turned out to be that they had to go into the aorta and make repairs in there, and then do an ablation behind that around the aortic valve. So it went from being a 2-hour surgery to a 6-hour surgery. And I'm doing good. I'm not cleared for everything yet. They haven't allowed me to run or anything like that. I'm on some blood thinners and all of that. But
you're speaking our language.
Oh yeah, it's good
Yeah.
time. It's
So,
good time.
yeah, we can
I will
relate.
tell you this though. When they did the first the first procedure, one of the physicians looked at me and said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, do you think you could eat more chicken?" And I said, we're going to probably disagree on this. And I said, but I would love to share some research with you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a great lead in. There you go.
Yeah.
So many of our members and the general public, have been told by physicians and professionals, to remove beef from their diet. That is bad for us. So does current research really support that, or is it kind of old news?
It does support that. And what is old news is the fact that it was bad. In fact, there was never any documented research done that said beef or whole dairy or any of those types of animal proteins really were the cause of high cholesterol. And in fact, that was a spokesperson in the 80s who got a nice little extra paycheck for coming out and saying that kind of thing when there wasn't any scientific evidence to back it up. But that has been a claim that has carried us for all of these years. And through the beef checkoff, it was one of the areas that really over the last number of years, we said, hey, we know this. We have the research. We've got to do a better job sharing some of that out with physicians and out with the general public and out with dietitians. And I think we've really done a great job with that we've I don't want to say we've put it to bed, because you still hear it some, but I think we've come leaps and bounds past that, and it's not the common theme anymore. I will tell you, when they did that heart test on me and that first heart procedure, and I've been high cholesterol for 28 years. I think they thought they were going to go in there and see something, and they were like, "You're clear. You don't have any buildup or anything." I said, well, that's because the body doesn't recognize animal protein, the cholesterol in animal protein, the same as it does some of the others. And so I was ready with some research for them. But anyway,
Right.
I'll digress off that,
Well,
but yeah, absolutely. Lots of research has been done really to just, put the walls down on that.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, did you come with any of that, just
Yeah. So,
to
I
share?
thought I would, just kind of hit a little bit on here just for some questions. I typed up a few questions here that I get from people quite a bit as well. And I thought I would share some of those real quick and we'll
Sure.
look at some of these other things. One of the things I always see, of course, is can we enjoy beef as part of a healthy diet? And of course, in fact, what we say is a 3-ounce serving of beef, which is about the size of a phone. And ladies, that's really what we're talking about for you. For men, we're talking more in the 4 to 6 ounce range for a man, that really you can, every day. And it's, not going to have an adverse effect on you. In fact, you can do it in just about 150 calories if you're, choosing a nice lean cut. So of course it's an excellent thing to have in your diet every day. And then, as we've transitioned over time, we've actually learned that 5.5 ounces, even 6, we are a society now that's looking at a higher protein. We're recognizing higher protein diets, which is exciting, which is great, and the benefits of those. So now we are talking more about that, and the Dietary Guidelines of America changed in 2021 really to reflect those changes, not just in the adult age group, but children as well, which was really very progressive, something that's needed to happen for quite some time. And I want you to know that I'm not, what I'm about to say next is not an attempt to disparage another product. We don't ever do that. I mean, I always say I support the entire barn house. I ate a little fried chicken for supper last night, so I don't put chicken down. I certainly know that we don't eat the same things over and over again, but I share the reference to chicken because a lot of times we see this comparison being made. Oh, there's less cholesterol, it's a better choice, so on and so forth. And I think when we look at protein, which we know is a building block and so important, to receive the protein in a 3-ounce serving of beef, you would need about 8 ounces of chicken breast, and now that's going to push your calorie count higher too. So I like to kind of share that a little bit, that hey, we really are the winner when it comes to the protein category. And then, a big one, and I have another slide about this too, is just that whole, what happens is grass finished beef more nutritious than grain finished? We see that an awful lot too. And I don't know, Chef, if that's a question that kind of circulates in your mind, or what your choices are with that. But,
I'm a
grass,
grain guy.
you're a grain guy. Okay. I kind of probably figured. What we know is, grass finished beef tends to be a little bit leaner because, it has a little lower fat content, of course. But we can look at a slide in just a couple of minutes that really talks about the different types of fat. So there's not a health benefit to having grass finished over grain finished. It's just a fraction of a hair difference. So I always say, do whatever fits your budget, do whatever tastes good to you. They're both a great choice.
Absolutely.
So.
Right. And I like your last question on there.
Oh, yeah.
Plant
Sorry, I missed
versus,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Where are we at with the plant-based diets and the proteins? And, it's some things you're just not going to replicate the same. You can really try, but you're not really going to get it quite the same. So, those plant-based items, especially these things that we're seeing that are created and maybe packaged and sold near the beef case, but they're not meat, aren't going to have the same amino acids that your body needs. It's certainly not going to be able to duplicate the protein and all of the other nutrients like the zinc and the choline and the selenium and the niacin and iron, and particularly iron, that we really need. So,
Right. Yeah, iron is real important to our group, because most of us, and after having surgery, most of us end up being anemic.
Absolutely.
And even with me, and in fact, my numbers aren't perfect anymore, and have to keep that B12 and the niacin and the vitamin C and the iron and everything, coming in. So one question you don't have there, which it's one of my pet peeves and topics, is what about organic versus non-organic?
I would
Okay.
love to share that one with you. Yeah, let's talk about
Yeah.
that one. Give me just a minute here. I'm gonna pick through a couple of slides. We can go back to that one in a minute,
Yep.
but I love that discussion because there's a lot of confusion around that. And if you bear with me in just 1 second, I'm going to close these window blinds that are coming in.
Sure. And I'll
Shine
talk for a
blindly
second
here.
about that because guys, when I taught at the university, in my foods courses, I always did a section on organic versus non-organic, or regular agricultural products. Was there a benefit, and actually what is organic and what does it mean, to be organic foods? And my general, conclusions that I have come up with about organics, and we know, and Mindy as well, as far as health benefits,
Nutrition wise,
nut-
they're equal.
yes, there's no difference in the nutritional value of a organic food versus a non-organic food.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. When we go into the grocery store, there's so much. One of the things we really are concerned with is marketing integrity, is how are we labeling products, because it can be very it can be very confusing and quite honestly even be a little deceitful, if you will, to the shopper, if that makes sense. Because sometimes people just they'll make a claim on a label, but they're really not backing it up. And there's a lot of layers that go into being able to make some of these claims. So I call this one natural beef never ever, and these are the things that it never ever receives. And understand, organic and natural can be different, and natural doesn't always mean that it's organic. A lot of people can slap that word on something, but to be fully natural, it needs to never receive an antibiotic, never receive growth hormones, and we can even discuss it. In fact, I love discussing those two topics. We can talk about that too. They may have been given vaccines, and that's important to know. That is in organic as well. People assume that, oh, well, if I've eaten organic, they haven't had a vaccine, and that's not true. That's not true at all. And we have some rules in this country about cattle requiring some vaccinations, much like, we do with our children and ourselves and things like that. So they may have been fed grass or grain. The difference here with the organic label is, in order to be certified 100% organic, not only do they have to go through an extremely expensive process, but their feed has to be 100% organic. And that is difficult. So a
right.
lot of people don't do that. A lot of farms
Yeah.
and ranches follow all of these great programs. This is a very standard operating procedure, if you will, but they simply don't have the $100,000, the $200,000 to be labeled, or
Right.
the time.
The certification process, and that
Yep.
is all sorts of staff. I've talked to farmers here in Central Florida. They said, they would love to, but they just can't afford to pay all these people to do all the bookkeeping that's necessary and the record keeping and all
Absolutely.
of that. And people also, assume that when you say that the grain has to be organic, and the thing I always heard from my students, and I hear from other people, is that, oh, it's organic, so that means they can't use any pesticides either, which I've seen over 300 pesticides that are labeled organic,
Absolutely.
that can be used in organic farming. So it's not a matter of being
Absolutely.
pesticide free or any of those things. It's
Yeah.
almost very similar. uh, I mean, there's some good things, but I think, my own humble opinion, some of it, there's a lot of it that's involved in marketing as well, to say that things are, organic, and, and if people want it and you love it, those of you out there, that's great, and you can afford it because obviously organic is more expensive because of all these additional costs. But nutritionally, you're not doing yourself any favors.
That's right.
So that's
Yeah.
just important to remember. If that's your point, there's no need in that sense.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that because it's true. And the similar thing I'll just throw out there is that's true is also the whole idea of genetically modified organisms, GMOs. GMOs are our friend. I say that all the time. They are our friend.
Yep.
And we eat very few, and by very few, I mean like 1 or 2 GMO items in our country. We just don't. GMOs are typically in things that are like cotton, that we grow, and we do some GMOs for corn and things. If you saw the corn without the GMO, you wouldn't want to eat it too well. It's actually what keeps us from having to use pesticides and things. So they are our friends. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that marketing again, putting things on labels that say, GMO free, non-GMO is the same as bottled water that says gluten free. And I see that all the time. It's like, yeah, duh, but they can put it on the label because it's true. But but so is every other product of that particular line or whatever it may be.
Well, the same is true of hormone too. They'll slap hormone free on everything. And every living organism has hormones. That's how we live. And so if we didn't, well, frankly, we're not going to live. We rely on them. So every time I see, hormone free this, then I just chuckle a little bit because everything has a hormone.
Right. But hasn't the package, especially in the poultry industry, that says, no added hormones, no antibiotics. I mean, they did used to do that. I went to Tyson U but that has changed over the years. A lot of things have changed. The feeds have changed and the processes changing how they raise the animals. So they don't need to do that. And I think both, I don't know if that was legislated or if it's just mainly, consumer demand, people, and that's isn't that what drives a lot? If consumers say, we don't want something that has added hormones and I'm not going to buy it if it does, and eventually industry is going to come around and
100%. Yeah, we're consumer centric. And so we want to meet the needs of our consumers and answer their questions and be transparent about the work that we do. And I will tell you, a lot of those things sometimes too are actually led by the producers. Just speaking of the cattle industry in terms of antibiotics, most often an antibiotic injection is going to be on the cheap side, on the $50 per injection, and then can go up from there. Well, I can assure you there is no cattle producer who's standing there and says, man, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to give every one of those things an antibiotic just because I want to. No way, you'll break the bank. They don't do that. But in the same token, providing antibiotics when needed is part of our animal welfare plan. We want them to stay healthy, of course, and we would not be good caretakers if we allowed them to walk around all the time sick, much like, the school would call me if they said, hey, your daughter's coming to school every day with pneumonia. What are you doing? You're not a great parent. So similar idea with that. So antibiotics, it's not something that we just haphazardly pass out all the time. It just doesn't happen that way.
We can talk on this all night, but I think we need to get back to beef and the diet. Okay, because I think that's why people are tuning in. So we talked about how it contributes to a healthy diet with the vitamins and minerals and other healthy protein that we can get from there. So are there certain cuts of beef that are better for us than others? That we should be looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what considerations when we're buying it, I kind of shared just a few things that usually, comes down to what the consumer is looking at. What are the cuts? There's a lot of cuts. And that's what's cool about beef is, the versatility of our product. But then, I always say, they're looking at cost too. What fits our budget? And we'll look in a minute on things that are cook once and eat twice. But that's a big thing in my house. And that's what I always encourage, especially in times right now where we're seeing our grocery bills running higher than what we're really comfortable with. Look at the ways that you can stretch the dollar. And with beef, we really can do that really well. And then, of course, quality and tenderness, labeling. We mentioned a little bit of that already. And then the preparation process and the cooking time and the tools. Not everybody is a gifted chef like you are, Rob. So they probably don't have all the tools or, the expertise. And so, it gets a little more to the average consumer. And then we get spoiled. We go to restaurants and we have these amazing dining experiences and we want to go home and create that same beefsteak in the kitchen. And people think, man, I don't know how to do that. I have to go to a Charlie's Steakhouse or something to get that. But the truth is, you don't. You can do a great job in your house too. So I shared this beef cuts poster, and I'll tell everybody how to find all of this great information once we wrap up. And I'm happy to send anything out via email, or I'll share my email address too, and happy to share any of that with folks. But there's just so many beef cuts, and this is just some of what you could see in your grocery case. And we sit right now with about 36 lean cuts of beef, which is outstanding. We've really come so far, and that really does fall into what your listeners want to be looking for. And then we also know that we can make most of the rest of the cuts very lean if we just do a little work. We get out a little knife and trim off a little extra fat. You can create that same type of lean cut. So when something is lean, it's going to contain less than 10 grams of fat, 4.5 grams or less of saturated fat, and then less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol. And some of those words you're looking for in the meat case, if you're looking for something on the leaner side, those buzzwords like round or loin, those are going to be names that are going to kind of point you to some of that leaner part of the carcass, top sirloin steak or a brisket or ground beef that's 93% lean. Those things are going to be your leaner beef cuts. And everybody knows steaks. They know the ribeye. They know ground beef. They know a chuck roast, some of those things. But some of these other cuts in here, you probably recognize a couple of those, Chef. Maybe this one that looks like a triangle.
Yeah, the tri-tip.
That's a great tri-tip. That's right. Yep. That's a newer cut in this part of the country.
Yep. You got a flank steak there.
That's right. In
the corner, which is a great steak, and those are real nice and lean. Again, they have to know how to do it. And I will be doing a program in June that will be kind of beef centric. So we'll talk about cooking some of these different products and such in the June program.
How about this one, Chef? I don't know if you see my cursor on it up here at the top.
Looks like a tenderloin to me.
It does look.
Or is it a chuck tender?
It does look like a tenderloin. You're right. It's close. It's the shoulder tender, the petite tender. Okay, and right. People always ask me what my favorite cut of beef is, and that is mine. It is the poor man's filet tenderloin. You can medallion it, and it's about the size of a pork tenderloin. Good richy beef flavor and lean. I love it. That's my favorite. So I always sneak that one in there. It's a good heart healthy. One of the other things that you can find too in the information that I'll share later is just some information on how you can make swaps, roast swaps and steak swaps. And I share that not just for choosing things that are lean and heart healthier, but also they're good to know for budgeting. How to make some of these choices. When you see a great sale, grab one right. And give those a try. And I mentioned the cook once and eat twice thing. That's big around here. This is I shared this one because this is one that I like to do that with. It's a beefy sweet potato mashup. It's an American Heart certified recipe that we have, and you can actually do it with leftover roast or leftover steak. In this case, it's a 96% lean ground beef. This is a big one in my house. And believe it or not, I serve this a lot when I'm speaking with youth groups. Can you believe it? It's got sweet potatoes and it's got beef. And I put it in a taco with a little bit of sour cream and some cilantro and cheese, and the kids just eat it up. So
Yeah.
it's
I,
a
I
it's
think
a
I think I
excellent.
think we made that in culinary medicine. It
I
sounds
think we did.
really familiar. And it's funny that cook once, eat twice. I must say that at least 2 or 3 times during every program that we have, because that's one of our my main themes always.
Yeah.
Because besides being cost effective, it's also easier on people that don't have the energy to do a lot of cooking. So just do it once and then, get several
100%.
meals. But
Yeah,
yeah, that I
100%.
remember that was really good. Everybody uh, really liked that recipe.
I even hold it over and use leftovers for breakfast, and I'll put an egg
Mhm.
with it, and it's, we're good to go. Yeah, that's a great one. And that's really a good way to your point, to really, maximize energy levels, all of those things, maximize your budget. And food waste. I hate food waste, but
Absolutely. Zero waste. Zero waste.
yeah, zero waste. So, when we look at tenderness in beef, that's of course a big selling point. And we predict tenderness based on really the carcass. So we look at those support muscles, which you're seeing back here in the round and over here in the chuck and the brisket, namely the brisket. Those are our muscles that really if you think about it, the steer is using on a day in and day out basis. They're walking. And so those are the muscles that are getting the exercise, and they're going to have less fat and they're going to be a little tougher. But they're also going to be lean. And so some of those cuts, like that top round or a bottom round, a London broil, something like that, excellent choices of lean beef. But truth be told, you might need to throw a little marinade to it or something to help
Mhm.
tenderize it.
Right. Or slow cook, and that's also what the instant pot is all about with a lot of these
Absolutely.
cuts as well. And that's easy cooking, because that's you put it in there, you set it, and you walk away, and
Yeah.
it's not intense cooking. Uh, and there's lots of ways to deal with that. But yeah, it was said there is some technique involved in dealing with the leaner cuts, because if you don't do them right, I mean, you're going to have a dry, chewy piece of meat, but
That's right.
it's not that hard to do it right. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I kind of gripe about a little bit that makes it hard for the consumer sometimes is they go in the grocery store and they'll see a lot of things labeled steak, and they'll pick it up thinking, "Hey, I'm going to have that steak experience I had at the restaurant the other night." But it's not the
yeah,
same steak experience, right?
right,
So
right. Yeah,
knowing where
so
it comes from in the animal.
yeah, yeah, that was always, thing you mentioned, the posture and the support, which is
Mhm.
great. And I just always told people to think of yourself. You can, pretend you're a
Yeah,
cow,
that's right.
and the muscles that you use all the time, you get strength, you get strong, and like a weightlifter or whatever. And the more you use them, the stronger they are. So the harder they're going to be to chew. And the ones that you don't use that much, along your back and so on, that just, those are where, and that's where your tenderloin is, and your
Yeah,
strips and the
yeah.
ribs, are all there. People don't think about the chest, but that can be tougher, because I mean, think about it, you're breathing all the time, and that
Hmm.
muscle is working 24 hours a day. So that's like where the brisket comes from and such.
That's
But
right.
yeah, just think about yourself. What muscles do I use all the time? Those are the ones that are going to be uh, the leaner and the tougher cuts of meat that needs a little extra cooking.
That's
So,
right.
uh,
That's right.
yep. So
That's
that's
right.
one of my next questions here, was about grading.
Yeah.
Is that a way to, well, you can see by the pictures here, to get some of those leaner cuts as well? So, an advantage. I mean, what about it? Do we?
Yeah.
Uh,
So, we're going to look at another slide in just a second that talks about what that fat is, what that type of intramuscular fat is. And
right.
intramuscular fat are these little lines that you see inside the steak. And that's not a bad thing. Understand that that's not a bad thing. It's, we do that fat is what gives the flavor in the meat, of course. So we look at the grading, primarily what we're going to find in the retail case, really in that select, choice, or prime category. And it doesn't mean that one is you know you're not going to have a terrible eating experience if you choose a select. If you're choosing select, maybe because of your diet or maybe because of the price point, those are respectable reasons to do that. You might want to add a little extra flavor, maybe to the select. You might want to tenderize it just a little, but you don't always need to. So, typically what you're going to find in your grocery store is really going to fall into this choice category here, these three here, and even some prime every now and then. Again, if you're getting a ribeye, a lot of people, they get excited about a prime ribeye or a prime strip loin or something like that. Because of that intramuscular fat. But if you're looking at this and you're saying, man, I just don't want any of that fat. I really want to stay in this select category. I want to stay down here where there's very little intramuscular fat. I want you to know, when we talk about the fat in beef, there's something really important here that most people don't really know. And that is that type of fat that we find in beef, half of that fatty acid is oleic acid, and that is a monounsaturated fat, which is the same type of fat we find in superfoods like avocados or olive oil. So that's kind of a little bonus that we have that not everybody does. Not every animal protein does. We have a high amount of monounsaturated fat, and that's what also speaks to our cholesterol story as well. Our good cholesterol story. So we also know that the third of the beef's saturated fat is the same fat recognized in chocolate for its neutral effect on blood cholesterol levels. So we've got some little cholesterol fighters, or in beef, which is also part of the great story we tell with beef's nutrition, not just the protein and the iron and the choline and the niacin and the vitamin B and all of these different things. I mean, we've got some little superheroes packed inside of beef. And so that's something that I like to share more and more, because I think people don't always realize.
I think that last sentence is really important. That research shows that a heart-healthy diet and lifestyle that includes lean beef, even daily, improved cholesterol levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm not a doctor and I'm certainly not a dietitian, but I'll tell you this. A couple of years ago, they when they were looking at my cholesterol, they were like, well, you're up higher, and I can go on a really strict diet like the kind they give me, and I might drop it 10%. I mean, I'm okay. So I'm down in the 250s range now or something like that. And I can be super strict and run and all of these things. And that's when they first started talking about putting me on medication. And so I asked the cardiologist, I said, would you give me 3 months? You and I are not going to agree on this, but would you give me 3 months? And so I went strong on the Mediterranean diet, and I added more lean beef. If you can imagine, I had to add more, but I added more lean beef, kept my vegetable content like I always did, the whole 9 yards. And 3 months later, I went in there and I had dropped 70 points. She said, whatever you're doing, keep doing.
Yep.
So.
Well, I know one person in particular that is a big fan of the carnivore diet, and will eat beef, 3 times a day if you give him the opportunity, or if he takes that choice for himself. And I've read that it's people doing that don't necessarily have that a high bad cholesterol, the LDLs and all of that. But again, this all does tie back. Poke me said, make sure you remind though, that daily, the portion size, because I mean, we're not supposed to eat that, that 24th ounce, ribeye every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where some of that information came down, right? There's like,
right.
Well, you shouldn't have it. Well, no, what you shouldn't have is 24 ounces of it, of any kind of,
Right. I
thing.
mean, like anything else, like that big slice of chocolate cake or whatever, once a year, or for special occasion, you want to go out there and pig out, so to speak, that's not going to destroy you. But on a regular basis, if those are the things that keep us healthy, or what we do on a daily basis and how we manage our nutrition, so.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, right. The other thing is that I think I was getting to that earlier, but the way that we changed how we do care for the animals and raise, the animals, that those feeds, as I mentioned earlier, have changed. And so they don't develop the same problems. And even, I tell people even about eggs, we're talking about beef, but, eggs have always been on the dirty cholesterol list. And they're really not anymore. They've changed the way they feed the chickens, the hens, and the eggs, do not have that as much of the bad cholesterol. In fact, typically the cholesterol found in egg yolks is not the same cholesterol that clogs your arteries.
Absolutely. And those animal proteins. Yeah.
Right. And but
Yeah.
that old school thought just sticks, it's really hard to overcome all that messaging.
But I think you just said a word in there that's maybe worth mentioning. You said sticks, and we want to think about cholesterol. Cholesterol is sticky. It lines your arteries and different things like that. And what a lot of the research has shown over the last few years is that we're really getting that sticky cholesterol from carbohydrates and sugars. Think about it. They stick, right? They're sticky items. Right. So it makes sense. Whereas like the oleic acid and the things like that, we're talking about things that are quick moving. So they're not artery clogging. So, but we're getting that word out there more and more all the time. And to your point about the genetics in animals, we've just, that's one of the most, it is really just the most incredible thing we've done in the industry is continually grow our genetics. The rest of the world wants our beef. And there's a reason that they do. We do a fantastic job. We produce 20% of the world's beef with 8% of the world's cattle, and which is, amazing. But we've done that with all of our genetic advancements. And when I say genetic, I don't mean genetically modified. I mean recognizing great traits in animals and breeding for those animals. So that we are using less animals to produce more product, that's less use on resources, that's less land needed, that's less carbon footprint, which is extremely small anyhow. But we've really dialed in on what it takes to produce a great product and do it with great stewardship of the land, etc.
Right. Okay.
Oh, we talked about this earlier too, was the grass-fed, grain-fed idea. So I probably should share that real quickly. We mentioned that there's not a big nutritional benefit one over the other. It comes down to, what type of purchase you want to make and where your budget is and what have you. But when we look at that grass-fed, I mentioned earlier that it would be a tick leaner simply because it doesn't put on that marbling, but the fat that it does put on is a higher percent of saturated fatty acids, which isn't exactly what we want as heart patients.
Right.
I
think that last line you're saying there, if I'm reading that correctly, about relying on grasses that sequester carbon, and then the smaller carbon footprint. So for the grain-fed, so it takes longer to finish cattle that are grass-fed than grain-fed. So they're contributing more methane, more issues, more so on and so on than the grain-fed. So in a sense, the grain-fed are probably better for the environment than the grass-fed.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. It's going to double the time. We're finishing out a grain-fed animal. I'm going to say on average 17 months. Depends on the breed. Might go a tick higher, might go a little lower. You can get into 4 years on a grass-fed animal. And one of the cool things about cattle, because of their ruminant system that they have, is we graze them on land that is inedible to humans, and we can't use it for crops. It's just not great land. And so they have this ability to take human inedible crops and grasses and things like that and turn it into a product that we can then eat. And then after we pull those cattle from the land, we find that they can actually go in, that land is left better than it was found. And we can now start, in many cases, we can run crops and things on those lands. So.
Right. Yeah, I had a friend that jokes about that, I get all my vegetables from the meat that I eat, I let them eat it and then digest it and turn it into meat That's where I get my greens
That's
from.
where I get mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do like my vegetables. I tell people all the time, they say, well, I guess you're not a vegetarian, as if I don't eat any. I'm like, I love vegetables right next to my piece of meat.
Right. Exactly. Sharing the plate. Sharing the
That's
plate.
right. Sharing the plate.
Yeah.
That's
There's
exactly
room
right.
for it. Right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
why don't you? We're getting close. Where's a good place to find all these healthy recipe ideas and other ways, and even the charts and so on, because
Yeah.
those beef charts are great if people want to. Yeah, you got a lot more here too. So
Oh, well,
uh,
these are some slides
yeah,
that are already on here. So
right.
I mentioned I was going to pull some things as we
Okay.
needed it. So,
Okay.
We have an amazing recipe resource that just has more recipes than you can possibly imagine, and it's so impeccably organized, and it really comes from the Beef It's What's for Dinner site. Now, Beef It's What's for Dinner is the brand that is owned by America's beef cattle producers, and they've owned it for more than 30 years, and it's kind of the go-to resource for all things beef cooking or even beef nutrition. We share a lot of our research on there. And this is just a quick photo that I grabbed from the site to show you what it could look like, and I'll show you how to get there in just a second. But it's done such as you could be in the grocery, you could find a cut that's on sale. You could say, this is a great product, or this is a lean and I want to try this, but I don't know what to do with it. Well, you can bring it home, search the Beef It's What's for Dinner site, and you're going to get there through the Florida Beef site. And they're going to give you recipes just based on that particular cut. So this was flap, which is one of my favorites, and probably you like that too, Chef.
Yep. Right
Yeah.
off the top, sirloin. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, excellent cut of beef. And it's going to tell you, hey, boneless cut, good texture, marinate and grill or broil, because we want you to be successful with the product so that you're building your confidence. You'll come back and, do it again. And we're going to show you, use grilling, use skillet cooking, use stir fry or broil, for some of these recipes. And you'll get there. I'm going to click on this link and it should take us to the Florida Beef page. And it did. Hooray. And this is our website. It's floridabeef.org. And not only can you see some of this research that I showed you earlier, some of these infographics that really will dive deep into some of the research we've done with heart health, with diabetes, with adolescent nutrition, all of these things. Also talking about raising beef, what that looks like, carbon sequestration, and some of these things you and I just discussed. Look at nutrition, look at cooking, but most importantly, the recipe section, by the way, there's the beef cuts chart that I mentioned. But you can click on the recipes to view the collections, and it's going really slowly for some reason. Maybe I couldn't, oh, there we go. What I love about our recipe database is it is broken down into so many different sections. If you're cooking for kids, maybe you have kids or grandkids coming over and you're like, I want to make something, this is kid friendly. And by the way, some of these recipes kids can get involved with, which is great. The heart healthy recipe section, or beef on a budget. So if we look at heart healthy, for obvious reasons, these are all certified by American Heart, and you can run anything from appetizers down to a beef tenderloin roast, that flank steak that you mentioned earlier. And this is going to look at not just the calorie count, the fat count. It's also going to look at sodium and things like that. So variety. I mean, I tell people all the time, you should never have a day that you don't know what's for dinner. At this point, we have a recipe, breakfast, lunch, and supper. You can just keep rolling through it. You can find them by seasonal recipes. You can search, if you don't pick one of these, like I said, and you went to the store and you saw that great cut and you're like, I don't know what to do with it. How am I gonna cook this? We will have a recipe for you. It'll be there, and you can pick from a variety of ways. I put in tri-tip. Here you go. You can make steak and blue cheese wraps. Holiday entertaining. I mean, there's hundreds upon hundreds of recipes in this database.
That's great.
Yeah.
Easy to maneuver and to find, and a lot of great information. Let me take a little break here. Josh, are we lucky enough to have some people watching tonight?
Oh, we have some people with us.
That's
Let's
great.
say hi to Chef Tom, Karen. She joined us. Melissa, John Brenny, Donna Mobley says I'm late, but I'm here.
Awesome.
Melissa had a question, and it
Sure.
was: Is grass versus grain a marketing sales pitch?
You know, it's a real thing. It's absolutely a real thing. And it goes back to consumer preference. I mean, some folks, like we said, they found that, they feel that it's healthier for them. And so of course, someone sees a market and they jump on that idea. And so now that gets to be promoted more. But there's really such little difference between the two. I think you could almost call it a marketing thing in some cases. I mean, a truly grass finished item, a grass finished animal, truly from start to finish, without ever having any grain, is going to have a little different flavor than what people are used to. So, not everybody's going to gravitate to that.
Right. And I think that's where some of the marketing this thing about does come in, because as a chef and other chefs, and Tom out there, Tom's a really experienced chef as well, one of our other members, knows, so the chef may have a preference towards that flavor,
Absolutely.
and so that's what they try and want to sell in their restaurants. So they make it look more attractive. But also, as you said, we know the grass-fed beef takes longer to raise, so it means it's more expensive, which means you get a bigger dollar for it too. So there's advantages there as well. And it just, it's kind of like the organic thing. It does sound, healthier because, the grain, the corn, and we're all told that corn is evil, and people think about corn syrup, which is another story that was fabricated. We can go down this road forever. About all these, dangerous foods and stuff. What Mindy wanted to say something.
Italians, they say they're just grain fed. Is that because they don't have the corn that we have?
Oh, the difference between the she's talking about like the famous white cattle in Italy, the Piemontese, and the difference with that, and because they don't have the grain resources that we do. But being over there, like their beef is excellent. But
Yeah.
So I keep going, Josh. I didn't want to cut off our viewers.
Yeah, I'm listening. My oven just went off, so I'm gonna pull my
Okay.
beef roast out. But I'm right here.
Okay.
Right on. Let's see here. And then Melissa said, "Good question, Rob," when you were asking about the first question that you had. Let's see. Chef Tom says, "Interesting discussion. Did not know Florida was so big into beef. Thank you for all the nutritional information." Right?
My pleasure.
Yep. And we will make some of that available.
Absolutely.
Oh, I threw
I'll
every
get on the
link into
website.
the chat.
All
Great,
right,
thank
done
you.
that, and I'll probably, if you, I know where to find the stuff too, and I can post it along with my recipes and stuff in the files section of the survivors group on Facebook as well. So you can put some of those charts up and things like that.
Absolutely.
And even in the discussions, we'll get this out all over the place.
And Josh, feel free to share my email address in the chat box as well. I mean, anybody's welcome to reach out to me.
Oh, I'll add it for sure.
Yeah, even if you're not from Florida. I mean,
That's
because
right.
it's all about beef, and I know Deanne works a lot with the Cattlemen's Association nationally as well, because it's all one big family.
That's right.
So
We're a village.
Yep. So, any other? Or Mindy has some.
I have a question. How has beef changed? Like when I was told when we were in college that you had the prime, the choice, the select. And now we were told that choice is closer to what the prime is, that we're older. What we were when we were younger is prime is now what choice was.
What high choice. Yeah, because we didn't even have select when we were in school. It was prime, choice, good, cutter, canner, Trying to remember all the, we never see
roll.
those. That's dog
Yep.
food and animal food.
That's
and-
right. That's right. You're not wrong, and that goes back to that genetic piece, Mindy. Is we've just come so far with our genetics. We're producing more prime than we've ever produced. I think last week's number was pushing 12% of the cattle harvested last week nationwide were rating prime, which is pretty impressive. And a lot of that prime, is going into your higher end restaurants and things. Although I shopped Costco over the weekend, and I got my 20-year-old son an air fryer for his birthday. If you think you can't do a great steak in an air fryer, I'm telling you, you can. I know the trick. I do it all the time because I'm time crunched.
Chef Renee at UCF, she swears by it. She says it's the best
amazing.
Steak she's ever cooked is in her air fryer.
Yep, fantastic.
And,
you just
yeah.
preheat it. Yep, and then
Yep.
throw it in.
Absolutely.
4 minutes on one side and 2 on the other, and you're golden.
Yep. So let's. One
so
other
I picked
thing,
up prime at Costco. Was my
Right.
point.
I want to make the distinction for everybody between the Prime Choice Select, which are quality grades, and then USDA inspected, which is a health grade. And I'm losing the word here, but there's a big difference. A lot of meat when you go into stores will say USDA inspected, but it won't have a grade on it. So the grade is your quality, guys. The prime being the top, and everybody is pretty much inspected. You won't find any beef in the grocery store that has not passed, where the plant and the animals have not passed USDA inspection. And so it's a big distinction to make. So a lot of places, they make a big deal about that USDA inspected, when they're not selling graded beef, which is less money, which is okay. But they want you to think that, they're kind of the same, but they're not.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And not everybody will necessarily be USDA inspected on an everyday basis. If they're a small, facility, maybe in your town, you might have a local person who runs a butchery or a harvest facility, a small harvest facility, and then they may sell some local product. They don't have a USDA inspector there day in and day out, kind of looking through all of that. But in order for it to go into the restaurant or the commercial food industry, it needs to be inspected. And I've walked those big facilities. You probably have too, Chef.
Mm-hmm.
And it's serious business, man. They're not playing. If something looks slightly off, or we have, the consumer doesn't know this either, and it's probably worth mentioning. Our checks and balances system is so great in America that we test product, we test gallons of milk, we test meat, and we know if that sampling has been harvested ahead of the withdrawal time for antibiotics, which we have with our when antibiotics are given to an animal that's a little under the weather, they now cannot go into the food supply system until they've passed that withdrawal period, which could be 30 days or it could be 150 days. So we can actually test product and know that they did not meet that withdrawal period, and now they are not going into what you and I are eating. They might be going into a different segment, like for pet food or something like that.
Right. So you can feel pretty comfortable with the system. It is tough, because I've also said I went to Tyson U. I went to IBP beef school before Tyson bought IBP, but in Nebraska, and spent a week out in the slaughterhouses. Is the easiest way to put it.
That's right.
It was a great experience. Great experience. And didn't bother me. I feel that everybody, and most people don't, should really know where your food comes from. And if you want to eat it, you should be willing to understand how it got to your plate, And he says, then you may not want to eat it again, but but growing up on the farm, that wasn't a problem, because that's just the cycle of farming and the animal. Anything else, Josh? We all good?
Now we're all caught up. Donna says a slow cooker is good for tough meat.
Absolutely. Yep. Low and slow is the way to go for all those, those tougher.
On the air fried steak, I heard straight from the freezer, 9 minutes each side.
I haven't tried that, but I've heard a similar thing as well.
Okay, interesting.
But I haven't tried it.
Be brave.
I should try it. I've got some pretty veal in my freezer right now that I should try.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tonight though is a roast, and it's going to go into like a Mediterranean style beef hero idea. I don't know. Do you say gyro or hero?
Gyro. Y,
Gyro.
like
Gyro.
gyro.
Yeah.
Y-I-R-O. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard it all these different ways. So that's what I'm making tonight with a nice little watermelon and basil and feta salad on the side.
There you go. Awesome.
But it'll be one of these things. I just pulled it out. I've got to caramelize it a little bit, but it smells incredible. And I kind of do my own little idea of Mediterranean diet, right? Little good for you idea. But whatever I don't eat tonight, I'll do in something else tomorrow night. It won't be the same thing, but I'll cook once and eat twice.
There you go. Absolutely. Speaking our language.
Yep.
All right. Well, Deanne, I want to thank you so much for
My
taking
pleasure.
time out of your day, and I want you to be able to go and finish dinner for your family. And I want to keep them hungry and waiting. But I really do appreciate your time and the information and your willingness to share with all of us here and the information that you gave us. And we'll have to do it again. And then maybe
absolutely.
say in June I'll be doing that beef cooking. So we'll have some more information then as well. So.
Well, that would be fun, and I appreciate the opportunity. I've looked forward to this one. I do a lot of events that are on large scale things, but and those are fun too. But I really just love when I can just kind of talk with people almost one-on-one and just be conversational about it. And,
right. Yep.
So
yeah,
maybe I'll get an invite to your kitchen to cook with you for one of these episodes.
There you go. Hey, we can make that. Josh is like, yes. We can make that happen. We can do that since we're not that far away from each other.
That's right.
I'm sure we can have a spot where we can, have cameras will travel. So
that's right.
We can set it up anywhere. All right. So I guess that's going to be about it, because we can talk this thing all night long. Like
I know it. Well, listen, everybody have a great week. I hope everyone's feeling good and taking care of themselves. And I know everybody's spread in different parts of the country, but I'm here to help you or answer any questions. And, we're in it with you. So.
Right. All right. Great. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And,
take care. Thanks, Josh, for your help.
All of our guests out there, they're watching, or our future watchers on YouTube on the channel, Aortic Hope. We want to make sure that you get there and tune in to all the other Aortic Hope programs that we have going. In fact, we got bingo starting in a couple of minutes, I think. So I know Josh has got to run too. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and I will see you tomorrow in the Aorta Hangouts.
All right. Take care.
At 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock tomorrow. Good night.